I grew up on the edge of a quiet rural town, the kind of place where the biggest news is the county fair, and everyone knows everyone else's business. But in the summer of 1998, something appeared that made the whole town question reality itself. They called it the house that appeared overnight. I still remember the morning it showed up. The fog was thick, the kind that moves like it's alive, and when it finally lifted, there it was. A two-story wooden house that hadn't been there the day before. It stood on the old Miller property, an empty lot left untouched for decades after the original farmhouse burned to the ground in the 70s. Everyone in town knew that story. The fire had taken the Millers in their sleep. The land had been left alone ever since. No one wanted it. But that morning, something stood on it again. At first, people thought it was a prank, a film set, some rich outsider with more money than sense. But when the county records were checked, there was nothing. No permit, no owner, no delivery records, no foundation history, just a house that shouldn't exist. And as night fell, that first day, lights were seen flickering in an upstairs window. I was 19 that summer, curious, stupid, and hungry for anything remotely interesting. My best friend Aaron convinced me we had to check it out. We went after midnight, armed with a couple of cheap flashlights and the kind of bravery that only comes from youth and profound boredom. The dirt road leading to the Miller lot had changed. It was smoother, almost as if it had been freshly laid. There were no tire tracks, no footprints, just the two sets of ours, cutting a path through the dust. The air was heavy, and the closer we got, the quieter it became. Not the peaceful kind of quiet, the suffocating kind, where even the crickets stopped singing. When we reached the rusted gate, the house looked older up close, weathered, decaying, as though it had been standing there for a century. The paint was peeling, the wood was warped, and the windows were clouded with grime. Aaron nudged me, whispering, "Looks abandoned." I whispered back, "It wasn't here yesterday." We both let out a nervous laugh, trying to hide the unease that was creeping up our spines. The front door was slightly ajar. Pushing it open, a smell hit us, like damp earth, like something buried had been freshly dug up. The entryway looked like a time capsule. Furniture was draped in dusty sheets, and portraits hung on the walls, but all the faces in the paintings had been scratched out. Every single one. A grandfather clock stood against the far wall, ticking with a slow, deliberate rhythm, but the hands never moved. Aaron started toward the stairs while I decided to check out the kitchen. The sink was full of dark, murky water that didn't reflect any light. I leaned in closer and saw my reflection move just before I did. I jumped back, my heart hammering against my ribs. My reflection stayed there, staring back at me. Then, for just a split second, it smiled. I shouted for Aaron. There was no answer. I heard footsteps upstairs, too many to be just his. I ran to the base of the stairs, calling his name again. The air grew cold and smelled of rot and something like old metal. Then I heard it, whispering. A dozen voices, maybe more, all murmuring something too low and jumbled to understand. I started climbing. Halfway up, the whispering stopped. The silence that followed felt physical, like a weight pressing down on me. At the top of the stairs stood Aaron, his back to me, facing a closed door at the end of the hall. His flashlight was flickering wildly. "Aaron," I said, "let's go." He didn't move. He just stood there, mesmerized. Then, the door at the end of the hall creaked open on its own. Inside was a child's room. Toys were scattered across the floor, and the bed was neatly made. But everything about it felt wrong. The toys weren't plastic or wood. They were carved from what looked like bone. And the wallpaper had a faint pattern. When you looked closer, you could see faces, vaguely human, with eyes that seemed to follow you as you moved. Aaron finally whispered, "Do you see that?" In the far corner of the room, something was sitting on the edge of the bed, a small, hunched shape. I raised my flashlight, the beam cutting through the gloom. It was a doll, a human-sized doll. Its porcelain face was cracked, one eye was missing, and the other glinted with a faint red light. Aaron took a single step forward, and the floorboard groaned under his weight. The doll's head turned toward us. It didn't tilt or fall. It turned smoothly, deliberately, with a soft grinding sound. We ran. We scrambled back to the top of the stairs, but they were gone. In their place was a long, dark hallway stretching into blackness. The walls seemed to pulse faintly, like they were breathing. We turned back toward the child's room, but it wasn't there anymore. Just more endless, identical hallway. I remember trying to scream Aaron's name, but the sound died in my throat, as if the air itself had swallowed it. That's when I saw it. Another door, with a sliver of light seeping out from underneath. I lunged for it, threw it open, and stumbled through. Into my own bedroom. The same posters on the wall. The same unmade bed. The same cracked lamp on my nightstand. For a fleeting moment, I thought it was over, that I'd just had some waking nightmare. But when I looked out my window, I saw the house's front yard, and standing at the gate, looking in, were two figures, me and Aaron, just as we had arrived. I blinked, and the window was dark again. The house groaned, a deep, living sound, and the floor beneath me shifted like a slow, massive heartbeat. I ran. I just ran. Through doors, through endless rooms that all looked like twisted versions of my own house. Each one was slightly more decayed, more wrong than the last. And then I found Aaron again, or what was left of him. He was sitting at a dining table in a room I'd never seen before. He was motionless, his eyes wide open but completely black, his mouth stretched into a silent scream. His flashlight lay broken on the floor beside him, its light faintly glowing. I grabbed his arm, trying to pull him up, but his skin was cold and hard like touching stone. And then he blinked. His mouth moved and he whispered something I still hear in my dreams. It builds itself from what it remembers. Suddenly the house began to crumble. The walls folded inward and the sound of thousands of whispering voices rose to a deafening roar. I saw what looked like a door, or just an opening, and threw myself through it without thinking. I woke up on the dirt road, the morning sun already rising. The lot behind me was empty. No house, no Aaron, just grass and silence. I ran back to town and told everyone what happened. They searched the area for days. They found my footprints leading in, but none coming out. And they found no sign of Aaron, ever. For weeks, the town buzzed with theories. Some said it was a sinkhole. Others said it was a prank gone horribly wrong. But 2 weeks later, a family driving by at night reported seeing lights again, hovering over that same empty spot. No one ever found Aaron. His parents left town within the month. I moved away not long after that, but sometimes, late at night, when the fog rolls in, I dream of that house. And every time I wake up, I swear I can smell that same damp earth. They say the land forgets what stood upon it. But that house remembers, and every few years, it remembers enough to come back. So if you're ever driving down an empty road and see a house that wasn't there yesterday, keep driving, because once you see it, it already knows your name.